Hey there, viewer, picture this in your head. A quiet little street, super calm and peaceful, with a shiny police car parked right there, all neat and perfect. The sun is shining, birds are chirping, and everything seems normal. But then out of nowhere comes this lady named Karen. She's stomping her feet, her face all scrunched up and mad, heading straight for that police car like it's her worst enemy. Before we jump into this wild story, I've got a quick question for you. Have you ever met someone who acts like they own everything? Like they think the whole world belongs to them? Drop a yes in the comments below if you have. Oh, and while you're at it, tell me where you're watching from today. Are you at home, school, somewhere cool? I'd love to know. And hey, if you like crazy, fun stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss any more. Okay, let's talk about Karen. She's the star of our story today, and boy, is she something else. Karen was the kind of person who was loud, really loud. Her voice could boom across a room, and she loved telling everyone what to do. She was super bossy, always pointing her finger and saying, "Do this," or "do that." Most of the time, people just listened to her because she wouldn't stop talking until they did. Karen thought she was the queen of everything. She thought she always got her way no matter what. And for a long time, maybe she did, but this day, oh, this day was different. This day was going to teach Karen a big lesson she'd never forget. So hear what happened. It was a regular day, just like any other. The sun was up, the sky was blue, and Karen was out doing her usual stuff. She decided to go to the grocery store to buy some things like milk, bread, maybe some cookies. She loved that store because it had a parking lot right in front, and Karen had a favorite spot she always parked in. It was close to the door, so she didn't have to walk far with her bags. To her, that spot was hers. She didn't care if other people wanted it. In her mind, it belonged to Karen, and that was that. But when she pulled up to the store that day, something was wrong, really wrong. Her special parking spot wasn't empty like it usually was. Nope, there was a car sitting there, a shiny black and white police car with big red and blue lights on top. It looked important, like it belonged to someone who had a big job to do. Most people would see a police car and think, oh, okay, maybe they're here for a reason. But not Karen. Oh no. When Karen saw that police car in her spot, she didn't think about why it was there. She didn't wonder if something important was happening. All she saw was someone taking what she thought was hers, and that made her mad. Really, really mad. Her face turned red like a big ripe tomato. Her eyes got all squinty and her hands balled up into fists. She slammed her car door shut with a loud bang and started marching toward that police car. Her shoes clacked on the pavement, clack, 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 like she was a soldier going into battle. To Karen, this wasn't just a car in her spot. This was war. She was ready to fight for what she thought was hers, and she didn't care who was in her way. Not a police officer, not anyone. In her head, she was right and everyone else was wrong. That's how Karen always saw things. Now let's pause for a second. Imagine you're there, standing in that parking lot, watching Karen stomp around. What would you think? Would you laugh? Would you feel bad for her? Or maybe you'd just shake your head and wonder what she was going to do next. Because here's the thing, Karen didn't know it yet, but she was about to make a huge mistake. A mistake so big it would turn her whole day upside down, and maybe even make her wish she'd never left her house that morning. See, that police car wasn't just any car. It belonged to someone important, someone who wasn't going to let Karen get away with her bossy tricks. But Karen didn't care about that. She didn't even stop to look at the car closely. She didn't see the lights on top or the word police written on the side in big, bold letters. All she saw was something in her way, and she was going to get rid of it. Now, she thought she could snap her fingers and make it disappear, just like she always did with other problems. But this time, oh, this time was going to be different. Let me tell you a little more about Karen so you can picture her better. She was tall, with short hair that she dyed bright blonde. She wore big sunglasses even when it wasn't sunny because she thought they made her look fancy. Her purse was huge, stuffed with all kinds of things: her phone, her keys, a little notebook where she wrote down stuff to complain about. Karen loved complaining. If her coffee was too hot, she'd yell. If her food took too long, she'd yell. And if someone parked in her spot, well, you can guess what she'd do. She'd yell even louder. That day, as she stood there glaring at the police car, Karen's brain was buzzing. She was thinking, who dares to park here? Don't they know this is my spot? She didn't care that it was a police car. To her, it was just a big, annoying thing blocking her path. She didn't think about the person who owned it or why they might be there. Maybe they were helping someone. Maybe they were stopping a problem. But Karen didn't care about any of that. All she cared about was herself. And right then, she decided she was going to win this fight, no matter what it took. So she pulled out her phone from that giant purse of hers. She started scrolling through her numbers, looking for someone to call. She wasn't going to wait for the police car to move on its own. Nope, Karen had a plan, a big, bold plan. She was going to call a tow truck. Yep, a tow. Come and take that police car away. Can you believe it? She thought she could just make it vanish like magic. She didn't stop to think if that was a good idea or if it might get her in trouble. Karen just wanted it gone, and she wanted it gone now. As she stood there, tapping her foot and waiting for the tow truck company to answer, a few people started to notice her. They were walking by with their grocery bags and they stopped to watch. Some of them whispered to each other. "What's she doing?" one lady said. "Is she really calling a tow truck for that?" a man asked. Karen didn't care that people were staring. In fact, she liked it. She liked being the center of attention. It made her feel powerful, like she was in charge of everything. Little did she know, those people weren't staring because they thought she was cool. They were staring because they couldn't believe what she was about to do. Here's the fun part. Karen had no idea what was coming her way. She thought she was so smart, so clever, calling that tow truck. She thought she'd get rid of the police car, park her own car in that spot, and march into the store like nothing happened. But something big was about to happen, something that would flip her whole world upside down and make her wish she'd just stayed calm. What was it? Well, you'll have to stick around to find out. This story is just getting started, and trust me, it's going to get wild. So what do you think so far? Can you imagine Karen standing there all mad and ready to fight? Have you ever seen someone act like that in real life? Tell me in the comments. I love hearing your stories too. And don't forget, Karen, about to learn a lesson she'll never forget. Something huge is coming her way and it's going to change everything. Ready to see what happens next? Let's keep going. Okay, let's dive back into this crazy story. Karen was on a mission now. She stormed over to that shiny police car like it had just insulted her. Her feet hit the ground hard, stomp, 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 and her face was all red and angry. She already had her phone in her hand, ready to start trouble. "This is ridiculous," she yelled, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. She wasn't talking to anyone special, just shouting into the air like she wanted the whole world to know how mad she was. "Who do they think they are, taking my spot?" she said, her voice sharp and mean. Now here's the thing, Karen didn't even stop to look at the car closely. She didn't notice the big red and blue lights on top or the word police painted on the side in huge letters. To her, it was just some annoying car parked where she wanted to be. She didn't think it might belong to someone important, like a police officer. Nope, in her head, it was probably some lazy shopper who didn't know how to park right. That's what she told herself, and that's why she got so mad. Karen was sure she was right, like always, and she wasn't going to let this go. As she stood there, yelling and waving her arms, something started to happen. A few people walking by with their grocery bags slowed down. They turned their heads to look at her. A small crowd began to gather, just a handful of folks at first, standing a little ways off. They were whispering to each other, their voices soft and curious. "What's going on?" one lady asked her friend. "Why's she so mad?" a guy wondered. Some of them pointed at the police car, then at Karen, trying to figure it out. The crowd was growing, and their eyes were all on her. Karen didn't mind one bit. In fact, she loved it. She liked when people stared at her. It made her feel big and important, like she was the star of a show. She puffed out her chest a little and smirked, that sneaky little smile creeping across her face. To her, this was perfect. She was in charge, and everyone was watching her win, or at least, that's what she thought. She didn't know yet that this wasn't going to end the way she planned. Not even close. With her phone still in her hand, Karen made up her mind. She wasn't going to wait for whoever owned that car to come move it. No way. She was going to take care of this herself right now. She started dialing a number, a tow truck company she'd called before when someone else had annoyed her. She tapped her foot on the ground, tap, 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 waiting for them to pick up. When they finally did, she didn't even say hello. She just started barking orders, her voice loud and bossy. "Get here fast." She snapped, "There's an idiot blocking my space." On the other end of the phone, the tow truck guy tried to talk. His name was Mike, and he was a nice guy who just wanted to do his job. Ma'am," he said, his voice crackling through the phone, "can you tell me what kind of car it is?" He was trying to ask questions to make sure he understood what was happening. But Karen didn't want to hear it. She cut him off quick as a flash. "Just tow it," she shouted. "I don't care, get it out of here now." She didn't give Mike a chance to say anything else. She hung up the phone with a big, dramatic click and crossed her arms, looking super proud of herself. Meanwhile, inside the grocery store, someone else had no idea what was going on. His name was Officer Jake, and he was a police officer. That shiny car outside, yep, it was his. He'd parked it there because he had to stop by the store real quick. He was on duty, helping keep the town safe, and he just needed a cup of coffee to keep going. Right now, he was standing by the coffee machine, watching the dark liquid drip into a paper cup. He was calm and quiet and totally clueless about the storm brewing outside. The store was cool and peaceful, with soft music playing over the speakers. Jake hummed a little to himself, waiting for his coffee to finish. He had no idea Karen was out there yelling about his car. Back outside, Karen's voice was getting louder and louder. "This is MY's spot," she shouted again, just in case anyone missed it the first time. No one takes it from me. She paced back and forth in front of the police car, her shoes clacking on the pavement. The crowd was growing bigger now, maybe 10 or 12 people standing around, watching her like she was on TV. Some of them were starting to giggle a little, hiding their smiles behind their hands. Others just shook their heads, wondering what she'd do next. The air felt heavy, like something big was about to happen. You could almost feel it, like when a storm is coming and the sky gets all dark and quiet. Karen didn't notice the tension, though. She was too busy feeling like a winner. She kept that smirk on her face, thinking she'd solved her problem. In her mind, the tow truck would show up any minute, drag that car away, and she'd park her own car right where it belonged. Then she'd march into the store, head held high like nothing had happened. That's how she saw it playing out. She didn't think about what might go wrong. She didn't wonder if towing a police car was a bad idea. To Karen, she was always right, and everyone else was just in her way. But here, where things get interesting, that police car wasn't just sitting there for no reason. Officer Jake had parked it because he'd gotten a call about something happening nearby, a little emergency he needed to check on. He wasn't some lazy shopper like Karen thought. He was doing his job, keeping people safe. And that car, it was his work car, full of important stuff like his radio and his badge. If Karen had stopped to think for even 1 second, she might have figured that out, but she didn't. She was too mad, too busy being loud and bossy, to see the truth. The crowd kept watching, and the whispers got a little louder. "Is she really doing this?" one kid asked his mom, his eyes wide. "I think so," the mom whispered back, pulling out her phone to take a picture. Another guy in the crowd laughed quietly. "This is gonna be good," he said to his friend. They could tell something was off. They saw the police car and they knew Karen was making a mistake, but she didn't see it. She was too caught up in her own world, too sure she was about to win. Karen stood there, arms crossed, waiting for the tow truck. She kept glancing at her phone, then at the road, then back at the police car. "Hurry up," she muttered under her breath. She didn't like waiting. She wanted this over fast so she could get on with her day. Every minute that passed made her madder, and her foot tapped faster, tap, tap, tap. The crowd stayed put, their eyes glued to her. The air felt thicker now, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Inside the store, Officer Jake finally got his coffee. He took a little sip, smiled to himself, and started walking toward the door. His boots made a soft thud on the floor, thud, thud, thud. He was in no rush, just taking his time, enjoying his break. He had no clue what was waiting for him outside, no clue that Karen was out there yelling about his car, no clue that a tow truck was on its way. He was just a guy with a coffee, ready to get back to work. But outside, the tension was building. Karen's voice cut through the quiet like a knife. The crowd's whispers buzzed like bees, and somewhere down the road, the tow truck's engine rumbled, getting closer and closer. What would happen when it got there? What would happen when Officer Jake stepped out of that store? Oh, it was going to be big, really big. Karen thought she was in control, but she was about to find out she picked the wrong fight. And the best part, she had no idea it was coming. All right, let's keep this wild story going. Things were about to get crazy in that parking lot. The tow truck came rumbling in, its big engine growling like a bear. It rolled right up to where Karen was standing, next to that shiny police car. Inside the grocery store, Officer Jake was still sipping his coffee, nice and calm. He had no idea what was happening outside, but oh boy, he was about to find out. Karen saw the tow truck pull in and her eyes lit up. She started waving her arms around like she was the queen of the world, telling everyone what to do. "That's the one," she shouted, pointing at the police car with a big, bossy finger. Her voice was loud and sharp, cutting through the air. She didn't care who heard her, she just wanted that car gone, and she wanted it gone now. The tow truck driver, a guy named Mike, climbed out of his truck. He was a big guy with a scruffy beard and a red cap pulled low over his eyes. He looked at the police car and scratched his head, confused. Ma'am," Mike said, his voice slow and careful. He squinted at the car, staring at the red and blue lights on top. "That's a cop car." He pointed at the lights, then at the word police written on the side in big white letters. He was trying to tell Karen something important, like maybe this wasn't such a good idea. But Karen, she didn't want to hear it. She rolled her eyes so hard you could almost hear them squeak. "I don't care what it is," she snapped back, her hands on her hips. "Tow it now." Her voice was loud and mean, like she was yelling at a kid who wouldn't listen. Mike stood there for a second, looking from Karen to the police car and back again. He didn't seem too sure about this. Towing a police car, that sounded like trouble. But Karen kept glaring at him, her arms crossed and her foot tapping tap, tap, tap like she was counting the seconds until he obeyed her. Finally, Mike shrugged his shoulders. "Okay, ma'am," he said, sounding like he didn't really want to do it. "Your call." He grabbed his big hook and some chains from the back of his truck and started walking over to the police car. The crowd around them, those people who'd been watching Karen yell, started to buzz. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Mike bent down and started hooking the police car up to his tow truck. The chains clinked and clanked as he wrapped them around the car's front. The crowd gasped, their mouths dropping open. "No way," one kid whispered to his dad, his eyes huge. "He's really doing it," a lady said, pulling out her phone fast. She held it up and started recording, the little red light blinking as she captured everything. Other people grabbed their phones too, pointing them at Karen and Mike and the police car. They wanted to catch this moment, it was too wild to miss. Karen didn't care about the phones or the gasps. She just stood there with her arms crossed, that smug little smirk still on her face. She looked so proud, like she'd just won a big prize. To her, this was perfect. That annoying car was finally getting out of her spot, and she was the one making it happen. She didn't think about what might go wrong. She didn't wonder if towing a police car could get her in trouble. In her mind, she was the boss, and everyone else had to listen to her. That's how Karen saw the world, and right now, she thought she was winning. Mike kept working, his hands moving fast. He hooked the chains tight, then climbed back into his truck. He pressed a button and the tow truck's big arms started to lift. The police car creaked and groaned as its front wheels came off the ground. It tilted up, dangling there like a toy being picked up by a giant. The crowd went even quieter, just watching with wide eyes. Some of them giggled nervously, like they knew something big was coming. Others shook their heads, whispering to each other. "And she's gonna regret this," one guy said softly. "Oh yeah," his friend agreed, "this is bad." Karen didn't hear them. She was too busy feeling like the queen of the parking lot. She nodded at Mike like she was giving him a gold star for doing what she said. "Good job," she muttered, though she didn't really care about him. She just wanted that car gone so she could park her own car and go shopping. She tapped her foot again, tap, 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 watching the police car hang there. To her, this was the best day ever. She had no idea how wrong she was. But then something happened. Inside the grocery store, the door swung open with a little whoosh. Out stepped Officer Jake, his coffee cup warm in his hand. He was tall, with a blue uniform that looked crisp and clean. His badge gleamed in the sunlight, shiny and bright, showing everyone he was a police officer. He'd just finished his coffee break and was ready to get back to work. He took one step outside, then stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes went wide, and his mouth dropped open just a little. He stared across the parking lot at his police car, dangling from the tow truck like it was a piece of junk. For a second, everything froze. Officer Jake just stood there, holding his coffee, blinking at what he saw. The crowd went super silent, like they were holding their breath. You could hear a pin drop, it was so quiet. Even the birds stopped chirping, like they knew something big was about to happen. Jake's eyes moved from his car to Mike in the tow truck, then to Karen standing there with her arms crossed. He didn't say anything yet, just stared, trying to figure out what in the world was going on. Karen didn't notice him. Not yet, she was too busy watching the police car lift higher off the ground. She didn't see Officer Jake standing by the store door. She didn't hear the crowd go quiet. She was stuck in her own little world, thinking she'd won. Mike, though, glanced over and saw Jake. His face turned a little pale and he muttered something under his breath. "Oh no," he said softly, so quiet Karen didn't hear. He knew this was trouble, big trouble. He tried to warn her, but she wouldn't listen, and now here was the police officer, right there in front of them. The crowd started to shift a little. People nudged each other, pointing at Jake. "That's his car," one lady whispered to her friend, her voice excited. "She's in for it now," a kid said, bouncing on his toes. They could feel it. The air was getting thick again, like before a big storm. Something was building, something huge. Karen still didn't see it, but everyone else did. They knew this was the moment everything was going to change. Officer Jake took a slow step forward, his boots crunching on the pavement. Crunch, crunch. He held his coffee tight, like it was the only thing keeping him calm. His eyes stayed locked on his car, then flicked to Karen. He was starting to put the pieces together. Someone was towing his police car, his work car, the one he needed to keep people safe. And there was Karen, standing there like she owned the place, telling Mike what to do. Jake's eyebrows went up a little, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Karen finally turned her head just a tiny bit, but she still didn't see Jake. She was too focused on the tow truck, too proud of herself. "Hurry up," she barked at Mike, her voice loud and bossy as ever. Mike winced, glancing at Jake again. He wanted to say something to stop this, but Karen was in charge, or so she thought. The police car lifted a little higher, its back wheels barely touching the ground now. The crowd held their phones steady, recording every second. They didn't want to miss what was coming next. Officer Jake took another step. Crunch, crunch. He was closer now, close enough to hear Karen's yelling. His face didn't look mad yet, just surprised. But you could tell he was thinking hard, figuring out what to do. The tension was so thick you could almost touch it. The crowd watched, waiting. Mike watched, worried, and Karen, she just kept smirking, totally blind to the storm heading her way. She was about to notice Officer Jake, and when she did, oh boy, things were going to get wild. Here we go, the big moment in our story. Things were about to flip upside down for Karen, and it all started when Officer Jake decided to step in. He'd been watching from the side, his police car dangling from the tow truck, and he couldn't stay quiet anymore. He set his coffee cup down on a little bench nearby, super careful so it wouldn't spill. Then he straightened up, took a deep breath, and started walking over, slow and steady, like he wasn't scared of anything. His boots went crunch, crunch on the pavement, loud enough for everyone to hear. He looked calm, but you could tell he meant business. "Excuse me," Jake said, his voice clear and strong. It cut through the air like a knife, sharp and serious. "What's going on here?" He didn't yell or shout, he didn't need to. His words were enough to make everyone stop and listen. The crowd, all those people with their phones out, turned their heads to watch him. They knew something huge was happening now. Karen heard his voice and spun around fast, her blonde hair whipping in the air. She was ready to yell like she always did when someone got in her way. Her mouth opened, her eyes narrowed, and she was about to let loose until she saw him. Officer Jake stood there in his blue uniform, his badge shining bright in the sun. His hat sat neat on his head and his face was serious. Karen's eyes went big and her jaw dropped a little. All that yelling she'd planned, it got stuck in her throat. Her face, which had been red and mad before, turned pale, like all the color just drained right out of it. This is your car," she stammered, her voice shaky and small. She pointed at the police car, still hanging from the tow truck, like she couldn't believe it. Her hands were trembling now, and that bossy tone she always used was gone. She didn't sound like a queen anymore, she sounded scared. Jake nodded, slow and sure. "Yes, ma'am," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I was parked here for an emergency call nearby. Mind telling me why it's on a tow truck?" He tilted his head a little, waiting for her answer. His eyes locked on hers, and you could tell he wasn't messing around. He wasn't mad, not yet, but he wanted to know what Karen was thinking, trying to tow his car like that. The crowd couldn't stay quiet anymore. They burst into whispers, their voices buzzing like a bunch of bees. "Oh wow," one lady said, her hand over her mouth. "She didn't know." A kid giggled, tugging on his mom's sleeve. "This is crazy," a guy whispered to his friend, holding his phone up higher to record it all. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what Karen would say. They could feel it. This was the moment everything changed. Mike, the tow truck guy, stepped back from his truck. He rubbed the back of his neck, looking nervous. "I tried to tell her," he muttered, loud enough for Jake to hear but soft enough that Karen might miss it. Mike's face was red now, like he was embarrassed to be part of this mess. He'd warned Karen it was a police car, but she wouldn't listen. Now he just wanted to stay out of trouble. Karen's smug grin, the one she'd had all along, was gone, vanished. Her lips pressed tight together and her eyes darted around like she was looking for a way out. She opened her mouth to say something, anything, but no words came out. She just stood there, frozen, staring at Officer Jake. All that big talk, all that yelling, she didn't have it anymore. Her plan, the one where she'd get rid of the car and park in her spot, had crashed hard. And now she was the one in hot water. Officer Jake didn't wait for her to talk. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a little notepad, the kind police officers used to write tickets. He flipped it open with a quick flick of his wrist and grabbed a pen from his shirt. "Calling a tow on a police vehicle," he said, his voice calm but firm. "That's a new one. He started writing, his pen scratching across the paper, scribble, scribble. He didn't look mad, just focused, like this was all part of his job. But you could tell he wasn't happy about it. Who would be? His car was dangling from a tow truck because of Karen. Karen's eyes got even wider when she saw the notepad. "Wait," she squeaked, finally finding her voice. "I didn't know it was yours." Her words tumbled out fast, tripping over each other. She waved her hands in the air, trying to explain, but it didn't sound good. She looked like a kid caught sneaking a cookie, not a grown-up who just tried to tow a police car. The crowd giggled a little, hiding their laughs behind their hands. They could see it now. Karen's big, bold plan had blown up in her face. Jake didn't stop writing. He glanced up at her just for a second, then back at his notepad. "You didn't know," he said, his voice flat. "It says police on the side. It's got lights on top." He pointed at the car with his pen still dangling there, creaking a little as it swayed. "Pretty hard to miss, ma'am." He wasn't yelling, but his words hit hard. Karen shrank back, her shoulders hunching like she wanted to disappear. Mike stepped forward, holding up his hands. "Officer, I told her it was a cop car," he said, his voice quick. "She said tow it anyway." He didn't want Jake to think this was his idea. Mike was just doing his job, following Karen's orders. Now he looked worried, like he might get in trouble too. Jake nodded at him just a little, like he understood. "I hear you," he said to Mike, then turned back to Karen. "But she's the one who called you, right?" Mike nodded fast. "Yes, sir," he said, stepping back again. Karen's face went from pale to red again, but this time it wasn't from being mad, it was from being caught. She thought she could boss everyone around, get her way like always. But now she was standing in front of a police officer with a crowd watching, and her big plan was a big mess. She wanted that car gone, but instead she'd gotten herself in trouble. Real trouble. The crowd kept whispering, their voices growing louder. "She's done for," one guy said, grinning. "Serves her right," a lady added, nodding. They weren't on Karen's side anymore, if they ever were. They were excited now, waiting to see what Jake would do next. Karen's hands dropped to her sides and she stared at the ground. Her big moment of power was over, and she knew it. Officer Jake finished writing in his notepad, scribble, scribble, and looked up at Karen. "All right, ma'am," he said, tearing off the paper with a quick rip. "Here, what's happening." He held the paper out, but he didn't give it to her yet. He was calm, but his eyes were serious. Karen's big plan had crashed, and now she was the one who'd have to face the consequences. The crowd leaned in, phones still rolling, ready for the big finish. This was it, the moment Karen's world turned upside down. Hear how it all wrapped up. Karen knew she was in big trouble now, and she tried to wiggle out of it. "I didn't know it was a police car," she cried, her voice all whiny. "This is all a mistake." She waved her hands, hoping Officer Jake would feel sorry for her. But Jake wasn't falling for it. He shook his head, calm but firm. "You didn't even check," he said, "and you broke the law." He finished writing on his notepad and tore off a ticket, a little paper that said Karen had to pay for what she did. It was for messing with official police stuff, and Jake handed it to her. The crowd watched, and they cheered quietly, little claps and smiles. Karen's face turned bright red like a big ripe tomato. She wasn't the boss anymore, and everyone could see it. Mike, the tow truck guy, stepped up and started unhooking the police car. The chains clinked as he let it down and the car's wheels touched the ground again. He shook his head at Karen and laughed a little. "Next time, lady, look before you tow," he said, grinning. He was glad this mess was over. Karen snatched the ticket from Jake's hand, her eyes all squinty and mad. She didn't say anything loud this time, just muttered stuff under her breath as she stomped off to her car. Her big purse swung on her arm and she didn't look back. Officer Jake picked up his coffee from the bench, still warm, and tipped his hat to the crowd. "Stay safe, folks," he said with a little smile. Then he climbed into his police car and drove away nice and calm. Hey there, viewer, what do you think about all this? Karen's story was wild, right? Sometimes the loudest person, the one who yells and bosses everyone around, is the one who ends up falling the hardest. Karen thought she could tell everyone what to do. She thought she was the biggest, toughest person in that parking lot. But guess what? She didn't see the truth coming her way. She didn't expect Officer Jake or that ticket. It hit her like a big surprise, and suddenly she wasn't so big anymore. Maybe next time Karen will stop and think before she starts a fight she can't win. Maybe she'll look at the car and say, is this a bad idea? Instead of jumping in all mad. We can learn something from her mess, can't we? It's better to be kind and check things out than to act big and get in trouble. What about you? If you were there watching Karen yell and wave her arms, what would you have done? Would you have told her to stop? Would you have laughed? Or maybe you'd have just watched like the crowd. Drop your answer in the comments. I really want to know. Here's something to remember. The people who act all big and loud might be hiding something. Maybe they've got the smallest hearts, scared and weak inside. Karen looked tough, but when Jake showed up, she shrank down fast. So let's be the ones who think smart and stay kind, okay? That's the real way to be strong. Thanks for sticking with me through this crazy story. See you next time for another fun one. Bye for now.